I rewrote this draft over 10 times before it was finally ready to submit. Okay, now that I have you hooked with a punchline, I asked Claude, like, oh, what's the best way to start a YouTube video about essays? And it was like, do something like that. I don't think that's the actual intro. I just thought it was funny to keep that in. I can search every nation for the answers to my questions. It's been quite a minute since I posted a video on here. I actually was looking at the last video that I posted, and that was 5 years ago. And in the description for the video, I was like, this is my last video in a long while, guys. And it turns out that a long while has actually been 5 years. But hey, I don't consider myself a YouTuber, but I do like making videos to help people understand things and to educate people. So here I am again. And today I will be talking about essays. Wow, yeah. Essay writing, specifically in relation to college applications. And for context, I was not going to make this video. So if you have followed this channel, or if you were following 5 years ago, I made a couple of videos that I think you should check out. I made a video about WAEC or the WASI. I made a video about the SAT. I made a video about financial aid in the US, but basically things for people applying to colleges in the US mostly. So trying to get undergraduate scholarships and admissions here. So this video is for anyone generally in that boat. A video I never made was about essay writing until today. Till today, today. I still have people ask me about essays and how to write those for applications. And I thought, I would never make this video, like I said, but it's really been pressing on my heart to make it, even 5 years later. And I had hoped to before I started college at MIT, but I didn't end up getting to it. And then last year, I ended up applying to PhD programs for grad school. So I had to go through a similar process of applying. And I was like, I thought I would have forgotten all these things by now, but I still remember kind of a couple of the things that I did to get my essays to a state that I think got me into the schools that I got into. And then I was in Nigeria last year, so I got to give a presentation for and with Education USA. If you don't know Education USA, I have a video about them as well. Please check it out. But I had to talk about essay writing, and I was like, it's been 4 years. How am I supposed to do that? And it was actually fine. I referred back to old slides, and I was good. So I was like, you know what? I could make a YouTube video about this. Everything is now recent enough again where I feel like I could talk about it. And I also went back and looked at some of the essays I wrote for my undergrad applications when I was applying to PhDs last year. And I was like, okay, yeah, it would actually be nice to finally talk about these essays, to give advice and tips about how I wrote them. I will share some of them, not all. For anyone who is new here, why should you listen to me about essay writing for college applications and admissions at the undergraduate level in the United States or towards the United States? So in 2020, yes, 2020, right? No, 2021. Yes, 2021. I got into 19 schools on full ride scholarships in the US and Canada, including schools like MIT, which I ended up going to, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Brown, Duke, Johns Hopkins, others that I'm forgetting. Yeah, but Princeton, I think, doesn't really matter. It's somewhere, I think, on the internet. And then also the University of Toronto and one other school in Canada. Or I think that was just the one school in Canada. I'm digressing. So I know that by God's grace, I was quite successful with the college application process then. And I want to share some of that knowledge, specifically about essay writing. So with that intro, let's get into it. So a couple things before we get into the video proper. If you see me looking down, it's just because I have my laptop with me to refer to things so I don't forget. I do want to apologize to Nigerian students who are applying, not just to Nigerians actually, but I think to many international students who are navigating what's going on. International students are going through a lot. When the US shakes, a lot of the world shakes too. And the political climate is not very friendly, and there's been a lot of blockage in terms of border crossing and even being able to get into schools here and all of that. I can't speak much on that. It's not exactly within my expertise or jurisdiction, and I also have to be careful about what I say. But even though I was discouraged a bit about making this video, knowing that there are a lot of people who have to climb through so many more hurdles than I did, I still just want this information to be out there, and I think that it is relevant to even applying to places outside of the US. But yeah, it is well, guys. Then yes, I also, after this video, I plan to make like another video. So this is for people applying from like high school, gap year to university, undergrad. I'm going to make another one by God's grace about applying to PhD/graduate school, because that's also recent. So watch out for that. Hopefully the next couple of weeks, hopefully, I don't want to say months, but this year is gonna drop. So keep an eye out. And hey, this is some encouragement. If I can come back 5 years later, it is never too late to do that thing that has been placed on your heart, that if you are religious or if you believe in God, that God has been telling you to do. So do it. Okay, so what will I be talking about? And there will be timestamps and all of that, but I will be talking about the holistic view slash picture and idea of in relation to applying to colleges. Oh yes, this is for anyone applying. It might be skewed towards Nigerians because I'm Nigerian, but like anyone generally can watch these. I will be talking about like types of application essays for undergrad. So personal statement, which is the main essay, and then supplemental essays, which are like the smaller, shorter essays. I will be talking about qualities of a good personal statement, how you can structure your personal statement, steps towards a good essay, and then I will be walking through a redacted version of one of my personal statements. So I will not be releasing my personal statements because they're very personal. I was rereading them. I was like, I actually don't want this to be on the internet, but I will select some supplemental essays to put on a Google Drive that will be linked to this video. Supplemental essays, we're going to walk through that, how those work, what they are, and like the different types. And then some brainstorming exercises slash like how do you start, where do you start? Maybe I'll talk a bit about deadlines, maybe not. I probably might not. And then college essay guide. The first thing I said was this idea of a holistic viewer picture. So many people ask me like, what do you think you did to get into these schools? Or like, what should I do? Like, what's the formula, right? There isn't one. I'm sorry to say, and like this is said over and over again, and this is something I learned from Education USA, which again, check out that video. I feel like so many things went into my application. My essays were definitely one of my strongest things. I think writing has been a strength that I've had. I had a really good SAT score. I had great WIAC results. WIAC is like our final exam in Nigeria that we take before we like go as we're leaving secondary school. I had great letters of recommendation. I actually like sat with my teachers and I had the privilege of being able to just like talk through the things I wanted them to highlight. I also had a theme, I would say, like some like connecting point or factor for my applications that I tried to keep coming back to. And I had like an academic focus that I thought set me apart, which was wanting to do computer science and biology, so computational biology. This is not what this video is about, so I'm going to stop there. I did give a presentation, I think 2 or 3 years ago, to Education USA when I visited Nigeria, where the title of the presentation was how I got 19 full ride scholarships, which was very interesting to try to fit into an hour long talk. It was recorded. It is unlisted. So I need to ask Education USA for permission to know if I can just like link that in this video. If you do not see it linked by the time this video is published, unfortunate, because then yeah. But I think that video really tries to summarize my application in the grander scheme of things. To be fair, I think most of this was God's grace. All of it was God's grace. But then there was all the things that I also did by God's grace. Okay, so now let's talk about the personal statement. Also, I realized that I didn't turn on the 4K setting until now. So everything I've said before this was in HD and not 4K, and it is well. I just hope the quality still comes out fine. But the thing about applying to colleges in the US, right, is these admissions officers are going to be reading through a lot of applications. And it's a very long and tiring process. Now, when I was applying, the way I was thinking was I want my goal to be to stop an admissions officer in their tracks and be like, what a breath of fresh air. Like, you want something that helps you stand out. And to be fair, many people are going to be applying with good grades, good letters, great extracurriculars and resume and whatnot. Your essay is really the chance for you to stand out, to make a name for yourself. Like, you want to be that person that like years later, and admissions officers do this. I remember the sailboat essay, the student with the sailboat essay. Well, I remember the student with the big red bus essay. I remember the student with, you know, the XYZ thing essay, like an essay that's so memorable that they just can't forget it. What is the personal statement? So the personal statement is kind of like this connecting piece of your entire application. The personal statement is not a brag sheet or a resume. The personal statement is really the main essay, and it's something that you can find on the Common app. Now, the Common application, I would just recommend Googling this if you haven't heard about the Common app. And some schools will only take the Common app. Some schools will only ask you for a personal statement. Some schools will ask you for that main essay and then some other supplemental essays. With the Common app, there are 7 prompts last I checked, maybe more this year. As of 2025-2026 application cycle, there were, I don't think it matters which prompt you pick for the personal statement. You can pick one. What I did was I wrote the essay and then I picked the prompt after. Or you can pick the prompt that aligns most with like the things you get out of like your brainstorming exercises or like where things are hovering around. Now, some tips for a good personal statement or essay: should have a hook. I think the way you start the essay determines everything. You want a hook, you want something that demonstrates growth. You want a statement or an essay that has depth of thought, reflection, insight. It's always answering the question, so what? If you're telling the admissions officer that you are someone who enjoys science, so what? What does that mean? Like, there should be a why behind the things in the essay. Like, you can kind of understand what the purpose of it is in the essay. There should be ideally some level of vulnerability, even if not in your personal statement, somewhere else in your supplementals. It should showcase your values, like who you are, what matters to you, should sound like you. So finding your voice is like also an important part of essay writing. Is like someone who's close to you should be able to read it and know that it was written by you and had like some elements of your personality. You want to show and not tell. I hate not that I hate saying this thing, but I've heard it so many times, but it really is true. And we'll see some solid examples of this in sample essays that I'll talk about. It should have craft, right? Like, I don't know how to explain this exactly, but I'll show you an example. Like, craft is like creativity, is very like is clever, almost like some cleverness and like some play on things, if possible. I don't think that's that essential. It's not really about the topic, it's more about how you tell it. If you write only about facts, there's almost inevitably going to be someone else who has had experiences that are very similar to you. So those are my first set of tips for a good essay. I will share more after we've seen a sample essay so that you're not overwhelmed. Now, steps to take towards a good essay. The first thing I would say is go on YouTube again, search it up. Just read essays, read examples. College Essay Guy, who I've been saying College Essay Guys, I've been singing his praises already, and I've never gotten to the part where I talk about him. But you can find essays through his website and a lot of advice there. Then brainstorm, just like write things down. We'll also talk about some brainstorming exercises that I did that I also got from College Essay Guy. And if you have an idea, just brain dump. So once you have an idea, do like a stream of consciousness essay, like start and don't stop. Start writing based on what you think it is, and it does not have to be a good first draft. Then redraft and revise. My main personal statement was like 13 drafts, but I could only find 10 when I looked yesterday. Get a second, third, and maybe fourth opinion. That's when you want to cross check for things like grammar, use Grammarly. Be careful with AI. Don't write your essays with AI, please, but you can use it to refine. Just be very careful with that. And it's okay to refine your drafts. Don't get attached to your drafts. Save all your drafts so you can always go back, but choose a structure after your first draft. Don't think about the structure yet. And then, yeah, rinse and repeat until you have that final draft. How to structure your personal statement. So I, again, learned this while I was applying back then. I feel like there's two very simplified categories of personal statements. One is a montage, which is like basically this like series of unrelated events that you put together to form a coherent story. So it's not chronological. There's like something thematic. There's a thread that connects the different pieces. And the personal statement I'll be walking through today is montage style. Then there's a narrative. So this is typically like a chronological set of experiences that maybe have changed your life in a notable way. The flow is, the challenge plus the effect. What did you do? What did you learn? And there's some essays that are like an interesting blend of both. If you want examples of montage versus narrative, College Essay Guy. But I will say, don't be too stressed about figuring out which one you want to go for. I didn't really think, okay, I'm going to write a montage essay, I'm going to write a narrative essay. I just kind of wrote, and then it happened to be montage. I had two personal statements. Yes, I forgot to say that. So, my first personal statement was my chemistry lab essay. It's called the chemistry lab. My second essay was called the Big Red Bus. And I wrote that very last minute when I had applied early action to schools and I had submitted the chemistry lab essay. And I was like, I feel like for some schools, there are things that are, not conveyed in anywhere in my application that I wish I could put in my personal statement. Like I think my chemistry lab essay showed a lot about intellectual curiosity and leadership, but I didn't feel like it showed the ability to overcome challenges as much. And I didn't feel like for some schools, my supplementals showed that part. So I was like, okay, I'm going to decide which personal statement. I'm going to write a second personal statement, by the way. This is like, I think October, November. I had drafted my first personal statement between August and October or so. And then October, November, like December is the final deadline, right? Is it December or January? I think it's January. I'm like, I'm gonna write a second personal statement because why not? And I just really want us to do everything to get into these schools, guys. Like, I was just extra, and I think that is really the thing that got me into these schools. I think I'm still extra. I'm just a little more. I just have more steez now, more composure, I'm more demure. Yes, second personal statement. So, like for example, I submitted my second personal statement, which is Big Red Bus, to Harvard, but I submitted my chemistry lab essay to. I don't remember the schools, but I remember specifically I submitted the Big Red Bus essay to Harvard because I felt like there was room in other places to showcase the things or the values or the side of myself that the chemistry lab essay was showing. In hindsight, I was really overthinking it. Though you don't need to write two personal statements. This was just again me being extra, and I think that if I submitted the chemistry lab essay to every school, it would have been fine because um it showed me, like it showcased who I am as a person and who I was, and that's really what you want to do, is be able to read this essay and say, does this reflect myself? And obviously getting opinions from people, not too many opinions because then it gets confusing. All right, let's get into the essay. For this, I printed it out because, I just thought it feels more serious, more proper for reading an essay. Okay, I'm digressing. My chemistry lab essay started like this. The familiar coldness of the stainless steel handle in my palm sends chills through my body. I hold on to it longer than any normal person would, hoping that it will counter the effect that the humid day has had on my skin. It doesn't. That was my hook. Okay, I was very intentional about using my senses, touch, sound, and especially sight in the description. So this was like my personal style craft voice. Like I like to describe. I'm like a descriptive writer if I'm being creative with writing. Um, so here I'm just describing the door handle and latching onto the door. And Nigeria is hot, so it was hot. So I was coming from, our Fridays would be like sports day, and I was very sweaty. And I'm like, when I feel something cold, I was just like hoping that that will cool me down. It doesn't. Okay, moving on. Giving up, I push it down and simultaneously shove the brown door open. The squeak of its aged wooden frame welcomes me as the subtle blast of air from the ceiling fan slaps my face. The sight of the periodic table on the beige painted wall instantly greets me. Commonplace. Reading this, I'm like, I was actually just transported to secondary school and this door and the chemistry lab and the periodic table. Finally, sighting Mr. Chuka in his signature dress shirt, quietly hunched over his laptop, I know I'm on my turf. In the chemistry lab, I could let go. Come on now. I actually really liked the chemistry lab at my school. Chemistry, biology were like my favorite subjects back then, and Mr. Chuka was my chemistry teacher, so he was always in the lab. So I redacted some stuff here, but I'm gonna skip and then to the next part where I say, always eager to apply concepts that would otherwise have been nothing but words on paper, I memorized the lab's timetable to target its free hours. The room's silence when I could have it to myself was inciting, often leading to several follow-up questions for my chemistry teacher. When he eventually gave me access to his phone's hotspot to find my own answers, The unavailability of Wi-Fi at my school could no longer limit me. So what am I doing here? I'm saying these things, but I'm showing and not telling, right? About my intellectual curiosity. So I say I memorized the lab's timetable. The unavailability of Wi-Fi could no longer limit me. I had access to hotspot to find answers. It's like I like science and like to spend my free time on it. But I didn't say that. I showed it with explanations, with examples, with very tangible um references to these things. And that's how you write an essay that keeps the reader going. Like, it's, you want them to make inferences, you want them to imply things. Like, the inferences should be clear, but like never clear. It's kind of like when you're like trying to, do talking stage, I mean date stuff, I don't know, like you're like dropping hints, but you're not, like, you haven't really said it yet. Like, it's like your entire countenance is screaming, oh, I like you, but you're not actually saying it until you do. My love for chemistry grew, intensifying my desire to pass on knowledge. Seizing as many opportunities as I could to be an educator, whether in a physics or further math class, my teachers would sometimes allow me a guest lecture in class. It was different in the chemistry lab, though. Realizing how much I loved it, I got to assist with some experiment based classes for ninth graders. Ninth graders, please. That was GS3. Ninth, to be fair, my school did call it grade 9 as well, but GS3, right? Yeah, GS3. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm like intensifying my desire to pass on knowledge. Like, that is a bit more telling, right? But this is like the telling that came after the showing, or the telling that precedes the showing. Like, it's fine to be explicit, but you don't want to always be explicit. Then here, where I say whether in a physics or further math class, this was me trying to like just like slide in my general interest in STEM. Then next section, from helping my siblings with homework to starting a coding club at my school, I found this form of volunteerism in teaching instinctive. An intense desire to see other eyes light up the way mine did when exposed to the unknown propelled me. Learning was no longer for myself alone. This is packed. This is packed. Like, can you see that? There's so much that I'm saying about myself, but I'm again just like teasing it out, right? So from helping my siblings with homework, that already shows like responsibility, which is a value of mine. To starting a coding club at my school, that shows taking initiative. And this part is somewhere else. It was somewhere else in my application, right? The coding club thing, but I'm just like doubling down. Volunteerism. I show the desire for helping others. I'm answering the question, so what? Like I say, I found this instinctive. So the from helping my siblings to in teaching instinctive, that's like showing. And then I tell, like I kind of not tell, but I say, so what? Which is the learning was no longer for myself alone. The unknown propelled me. So I'm helping my siblings with homework. I'm starting this coding club. I'm volunteering. What? Why? What does it matter? What is the so what? And that was my so what. Learning wasn't for me alone. I wanted others to know this feeling that I felt about learning and just be exposed. Hence why I'm also making this video, by the way. And it also shows depth of thought, right? Like particularly this last line here, where I'm like, learning was no longer for myself alone. That's deep. It's very reflective. Remember, I mentioned that as a tip for a good essay earlier at the start. Then I said learning was no longer for myself alone. Here, neither was the chemistry lab. First of all, that line is a very good use of transitions between paragraphs. So just like consistently keeping things as cohesive as possible, like it flows right in. Here, my classmates and I grew fond of Mr. Chuka, and certainly not just because of the free Wi-Fi. So I'm bringing back the teacher I mentioned earlier. That's another thing, is if you're introducing something, there's this thing called Chekhov's gun, I think it's on the internet, where sometimes you'll fire a gun that never goes off. Like if you start something, finish it. If you introduce a character or something, it has to have some relevance or purpose. This is a general essay writing tip, but this is important here. We grew fond of Mr. Chuka, not just because of the free Wi-Fi. Days came when would playfully frustrate him with mindless arguments about chemistry theories. It was typical of our banter to end in bouts of laughter, with Mr. Chuka's evident pig snorts overpowering our shared amusement. Around him, there was an air of liberty. The fear of the void that would fill the chemistry lab following my teacher's absence is what made me challenge an unfair situation. So this is just the next paragraph. Following, around him, there was an air of liberty. Then I say the fear of the void that would fill the chemistry lab. This is also a good use of transitions, right? You can see that the paragraphs flow between each other. Like take the last sentence and the first sentence of each paragraph. Do Do they gel well? That's a good sign of a good essay too. When his, Mr. Chukat's integrity was misguidedly questioned by an influential parent, everyone was agitated. Everyone, it was mostly us, the students, that cared. Like, we're like, they want to take this man away. And I was like, nah, because I can actually be stubborn. Like, I feel like I'm a very, most people think I'm calm. I think I am calm, but I think I can be like, if I really want something, I'll be stubborn about it. Like, if I want to see something get done, I'll be stubborn about it. And especially when people try to get in my way, I'm just like, and this is in leadership positions, especially. Never afraid to fight for what was right, I united student leaders. Leadership, courage, and empathy are shown in just that one sentence. And then it's also answering the so, like a so what. I united student leaders against this decision. So it was mostly like people in my grade. At the time, we were like about to enter senior secondary or final year of secondary school. By composing emails to administrators, we carried our virtual placards, willingly driven by objectivity. And this kind of expands on the what, right? Like, what did I do, and how did I do that? This revolution was a victorious one that actually involved a students' council meeting I summoned, a meeting that was held at, you guessed it, the chemistry lab. And I actually remember this. Some things are a blur. I'm like, wow, okay. But yes, like my classmates and I met in the chemistry lab to talk about this whole situation when it was sort of playing out and, hopefully being restored. So here, this little paragraph here, I'm doubling down on leadership as a value. So involving the students' council, mentioning that, which is in my essay somewhere else. So it's fine to mention other things that are, sorry, in my application. It's fine to mention other things that show up in your application, but like, you're not just dumping like, this is my resume. You can just like throw hints and sort of show how that integrates into who you are. And then I'm backing up the extracurriculars. And then I'm also keeping this like montage structure going, where I'm like just jumping from different things and all tying back to what the chemistry lab. That's the idea of the montage. And then the next paragraph. The first time I walked through the door. So long story short, Mr. Chika was fine, and he's still at the school. Actually, I saw him when I visited Nigeria. That man really taught me chemistry. I still attribute the fact that I like chemistry to the way he taught it. The first time I walked through the door of the rather large room, I was unsettled by infinite unknowns. So I'm talking about the chemistry lab. Determined to step out of my comfort zone as my secondary school journey advanced, the lab became a constant in my life. And it did. Even when my school was renovated, it was the only place that wasn't altered. Which is crazy. It's true. Coincidence or not, this perpetual happy spot proved to be more than just a site for hypothetical analyses. Within its walls, I championed revolutions, prioritized service, and cultivated inquisition. So this paragraph is packed, right? I'm kind of summarizing what this essay was about. Like, it's a very nice way to put a bow on your essay and repeat the main points if you can, because that is just like, it's so satisfying for the person reading to be like, yeah, I totally got all of this from what you said. And then I show growth where I say I was unsettled by infinite unknowns when I first stepped in. So SS1, when I'm first going to the chemistry lab, by the end of secondary school, the chemistry lab was my turf, right? Like, like I was there so much, and I had grown. It was kind of like a way of showing how I grew. And then I love the last lines of this essay where I say, going into life at college, I wonder what room my new chemistry lab will be. It would be a nice touch if the entrance door could also squeak. If you know, you know. If you caught it, you caught it. If you remember at the start of the essay, I was like, the squeak of the wooden door, something as I push it. Like, do you get, like, that will make you as a reader want to go back and be like, squeak, did you talk about the squeak? And I did talk about the squeak. And that last line is craft. So remember I talked about craft. Like, that's like creativity, cleverness almost. It's bringing things full circle. I love a good full circle essay where you start with something but you also end with it. I started with like the opening of the door, I end with the closing of the door, or the door. And then I say, I wonder what room my new chemistry lab will be going into college, because you're grounding this essay, right, in the fact that you're applying to colleges. So here I'm tying my reflection back to my academic / extracurricular passions and just like hinting at the kind of experiences or environment I'll be excited to pursue in college. So this can help the admissions to see how, your past connections, your past connects to the aspirations and why you want to go to that school. There's other places you can do this in the essay, like the Why Us essay, which is a type of supplemental essay we'll briefly talk about. Um, and their colleges, yeah, just showing them your college is fit for you. And I'll talk a bit more about this line because one of my admissions officers actually wrote me a note about this. You need to keep watching to hear the G's, the gist, the tea. All right, that's the essay, and with the breakdowns of it, I mean, a few things that I highlighted were my values, right? Like curiosity and leadership, helping others, empathy, and then some humor here and there. Then examples of the things I'm writing about. So I tell, right, that I'm spending a lot of time with my subjects and that I enjoyed, especially chemistry. I talk about like I'm a leader, but then how this value shows up in my life, I'm showing by, I memorized the lab's timetable. I summoned the SRC, Students Council meeting in the chemistry lab. I united people to like sort of advocate for this teacher. And then some insight slash so what is, learning was no longer for myself alone. That was like a very like reflective moment, or was never afraid to fight for what was right. It's like why do all these things you're telling the admissions officer matter? And the connecting thread of this montage was the chemistry lab. So, real quick, I talked about the Big Red Bus essay, right? Like, that was the alternative personal statement essay I had. Just to give you an idea of what it was, the Big Red Bus was this bus that I would ride by myself to church, sometimes with my sister. So there was a point where, like, I learned how to get to church for myself, and my church was pretty far from home. And it was more narrative. I will not share it or even read anything from it because it was very vulnerable. There are a lot of personal things about my family in there that just don't need to be on the internet. It was kind of like a coming of age story. Like I showed how the Big Red Bus sort of connected, in a way, it was a narrative and a montage, but it connected areas of growth in my life in terms of like independence and responsibility, looking after my siblings again, like just like things like that, volunteering at church. More tips on essays before we get into supplementals. We're moving so quickly. Um, Make it full circle. So I couldn't say this earlier because it wouldn't have made sense, but you sort of saw how it came full circle, right? I don't think that's essential in an essay. I just love to write things that are full circle. Like I maybe even to a fault where like if I don't, it feels like I didn't write the essay properly. So yeah, kind of my writing style. Then asking so what about every line where you tell, and we saw examples of that just now. Know the relevance of every paragraph. So you should be able to summarize in like one sentence what each paragraph is about. It's really nice if the paragraphs kind of like flow into each other too. So if you read the first few words of each paragraph, there should be you could kind of paint a picture of what the essay is about almost. And then same thing with like last line of preceding paragraph, first line of next paragraph. Does that flow in? Then start with the ideas you have. You don't need to wait for the perfect topic. The chemistry lab essay, that like little part about the door squeaking at the end, that came in at like the final draft or like the 12th draft or something. It was very, very like later on. And I'm glad that it eventually slid in before I did most of my applications for regular decision. But it wasn't like I just like, I was brainstorming and I thought about the door and like how I should talk about how it's gonna squeak at the beginning and at the end. That didn't happen. So start with what you have and refine from there. Start early. Like I started with SAT prep and my personal statement. So my around August, so this is me talking a bit about timelines. Around August, I started prepping for the SAT. I wrote the SAT in October, so I have it in time for my schools. Then I was also drafting my personal statement on the side, and I had drafted a list of schools. So that was kind of all I had done between August and October. Personal statement, SAT, school list. Then from then it was just like all add additional things, refining, redrafting, then the supplementals, and also trying to spend my gap year doing other stuff. Keep a spreadsheet if you can. We'll talk about why this is important in a sec with supplemental essays. Not even if you can, keep a spreadsheet. That's a command. Not really, but you should. Sort and filter in deadline order. Yes, I think that is something that you all should do. Is different schools have different deadlines. So write for the supplementals at least. I guess I've started talking about them. Is write in the order of submitting. I got into MNC, but I remember MIT's essays I wrote the night before. I think I even submitted like 5 minutes late or something. Like, guys, I don't know what I was doing because MIT is not on the Common App. They have their own separate application, and they had a ton of supplementals, and I didn't think that far ahead enough. And that was my dream school. So I wrote all my MIT essays the night before. Ooh, oops. And finally is identifying essays that you can recycle. This is a great time to get into supplemental essays. What do I mean by recyclable essays? So personal statement goes to every school, so you can't talk about specific schools in your personal statement because on the Common App, that Common App is going to all. But with the supplementals, you can write things that are very specific about that school. So supplemental essays come in different flavors, right? Some examples that I have here are like the extracurricular essay, like tell us about an extracurricular. The why us essay, which is a very popular one, is like, why do you want to come to this school? Okay. It doesn't usually sound like that. They have like some other descriptions. And then the intellectual curiosity essay, actually, which is what I'm going to share for supplementals in a bit. So some schools have as little as one or two supplementals. Some schools have as many as like 8 or 9. I know Stanford had a ton, but they were all like 50 words. It wasn't that bad. Well, actually, no. They had to write a letter to your future roommate essay. I don't know if they still have that. That was longer, but then the other ones were not too long. Now the good thing is that you're not gonna have to rewrite. Like, let's say you have every school has 5 supplementals, and you apply to 15 schools. Hey, that's what 75 essays. God forbid. But so many schools have similar prompts. So like many schools will have why us. Many schools will have intellectual curiosity. And if you can identify, that's why it's good to have a list. So then if you can identify all the supplementals, you can figure out, oh, this school and this one and this one and this one and this school are all asking for intellectual curiosity. Let me make a master intellectual curiosity essay that I will just tweak a bit to fit each school. So this is an example. This is what we call recyclable or super essays. So with a super essay, you would have that master essay that is for all these prompts. So then you can sort of shrink down the number of essays you have to write. So you know how many like fresh and new and independent essays you have to have. You know, at some point I was just like taking an essay I'd written, tweaking it a bit, and then just submitting the application for the school. Like that's when I was getting close to the deadlines and I had like, waited to the last minute. That's sort of what I was doing. So let's talk about example super essay. This is the intellectual curiosity one, to give you an example. So this was Stanford's prompt. It says the Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. 250 words. Genuinely excited about learning, right? That's what it talks about. Yale's own sounded like this, the same thing that they're asking. Yale's extensive course offerings and vibrant conversations beyond the classroom encourage students to follow their developing intellectual interests wherever they lead. Tell us about your engagement with a topic or idea that excites you. Why are you drawn to it? 250 words. Tufts was, oh my gosh, yeah, Tufts. I love Tufts. I had a lot of friends at Tufts because it was also in Massachusetts where MIT was. It says, it's cool to love learning. What excites your intellectual curiosity? They're very straight to the point. Thank you, Tufts. Everybody's just all this grammar. So those are examples, right? Many more schools had that prompt. I know Brown had like, tell us about an academic interest that excites you and how you might use the open curriculum to pursue it. It's a bit different for these. And then MIT was like, pick what field of study MIT appeals to you and tell us more about why. So the Brown and MIT ones are a bit more like your academic interest. The other ones are like, what is intellectually exciting for you? For me, I sort of use one stone to kill two birds. So both had the same theme / topic. But I tweaked it a bit. So hope that makes sense. So that's the super essay. Now let's read a super essay that I wrote, which was my intellectual curiosity essay, which was perhaps my favorite essay, supplemental essay. And it goes like this. This won't be as broken down as personal statement, don't worry, because we've sort of talked about qualities of a good essay. These are much shorter. Personal statement is 650 words limit. The others are like 250, 150, 150, This was for this school called Washington University in St. Louis. And this school loved this essay. They actually told me that I was the only international student that they gave like a merit scholarship that they had. And one of the reasons was because of this essay that I wrote. So in about 300 words, tell us about something that really sparks your intellectual interest and curiosity and compels you to explore more in the program or area of study that you indicated. It could be an idea, a book, a project, cultural activity, work of art, startup, music, movie, research, innovation, question, or other pursuit. That was a lot. Every school should be like Tufts. See how straight to the point Tufts' prompts was. This was, I don't know what it is now, but 5 years ago. This is how an essay goes. There's a lot to be learned from the wallpaper on a teenage girl's phone. Completely void of Justin Bieber's headshot, however, mine is pretty different. It contains the molecular structure of every organism's distinguishing compound, DNA. But there's a twist. Instead of the characteristic organic base step ladders, ATCG, on DNA strands, my uniquely satisfying screensaver is populated with ones and zeros, every electronic device's native language. IBM's first hard drive weighed 1 ton and stored the equivalent of an MP3 file. By today's standard, utterly unimpressive. Now that we keep all our data in the cloud, though, we're in a much better place, right? Wrong. The cloud is still just a bunch of hard drives. In a world where I think that says trillion. 1 trillion, I think, gigabytes, 12 zeros, of data are produced monthly, just like IBM's hard drive, the cloud will become obsolete. But one thing that will never fade away is the storage house for everything that defines you, DNA. In a few years, likely the storage house for every digital file that is defined by you. If every cell in your body can hold biological information equivalent to a 2-hour-long movie in DNA's organic base, ATCG, format, and you have trillions of cells, that means you are more relevant than any cloud database, than any room full of 1 terabyte hard drives. This is so cheesy. This is kind of cute though. If my electronic data's binary ones and zeros values are encoded to ATCG and then synthesized into DNA, the capacities are, dare I say, limitless. I'm literally a supercomputer. So are you. Low-key, as someone who's still a biologist, that's kind of true. Although it's not perfect yet, DNA storage is closer than we think. The rapidly evolving crossroads between computer and biological sciences are more powerful than is fathomable, more powerful than data storage. I imagine myself being an integral part of this overlapping field. And that thought, it genuinely makes me delirious. Low-key, this makes me emotional because I was, 16, 17 when I wrote this? I think 17. And I wanted to study computational biology, computer science and biology, and I'm getting a PhD in that right now. Can I have a round of applause for God, please? Yeah, yeah. I'm not doing DNA data storage. I think there's ethical concerns about this. So yeah, but also this is not storing it inside your body. This was not about storing data inside. It's like DNA is actually a storage tool. You can store things. You can put it in a test tube in a liquid format. Yeah. I think that this essay showed a lot of intellectual curiosity. I think the main things that I'll point out are the hook, right? Oh, I can show a picture of the screensaver. I'll edit this video to include it. And it was true. My screensaver was like a DNA molecule, but with ones and zeros instead. Because I was just so excited about computational biology. And shout out to my mom, because she was the first person who mentioned it as a topic to me, because she knew I liked biology. She's a computer scientist. And I also knew how to code, and I also enjoy computer science. Not as much as biology, but I do. And then I watched a TED talk because I started just talking about comp bio in secondary school all the time. And then I remember a friend of mine said, "Oh, they saw this TED talk about computational biology," and it was about DNA data storage. And then that ended up being a full essay that I wrote. So you never know. You can. One of my friends who also was very successful with college applications said the trick to a great essay is take two seemingly unrelated things and relate them. And I was like, huh, I can see that. If you can somehow connect the two, screensaver and comp bio, I don't know. I don't think I did it like he did, but good for him. He's smart. So main takeaways: hook, humor. You caught that humor, right? No, my sister doesn't think I'm funny, but I think I'm funny. So humor is where I'm completely void of Justin Bieber's headshot. Mine is pretty different. Or where I'm we're in a much better place, right? Wrong. You can see there's a voice in that. There's a voice to that. You can sort of, my personality is shining through there with that. And then intellectual curiosity, obviously, and just genuine excitement. And even affirmation, where I'm saying you are more relevant than any cloud database. There was some you are, I'm a very I like to affirm people. I like to uplift people. I like to empower people. So I think that was also, that sort of came through very subtly. it's just very nerdy. Yeah. So that's that about the essay. This will be made publicly available. Um oh, and then yeah, for my version of this for Stanford, it was a bit longer because there was more space to write. And then I took out the wallpaper part for some schools. For the schools that didn't say like intellectual curiosity, but just like what do you want to study at our school? What is your academic interest? I still use this whole IBM hard drive DNA data storage talk about computational biology, but so that I wouldn't deviate too much from the topic at hand, I took out the wallpaper. But you can imagine like an admissions officer being like, "Oh, I remember the DNA storage paper, or I remember the the not Justin Bieber wallpaper essay." Like that's kind of what you want to have is like a distinctive thing. Mic check. I'm quickly going to talk about the Why Us essay. So that was intellectual curiosity. I thought I printed out this one, but I didn't. So I'm just going to use my laptop. And the Why Us essay is basically just asking, why are we perfect for each other? Like, why are you a fit for the school you're applying to, and why is that school a fit for you? And obviously, this means you actually need to know quite a bit about the school to write about this. And I remember I had like a master Why Us essay doc where I just wrote a bunch of facts about the schools that would excite me. So like things like traditions and academic research opportunities. And I would look for the exact same thing for every school so I wouldn't have to switch up my essay too much. And I'll explain. Things like academics, extracurriculars, study abroad, clubs, being very specific is really the name of the game. Like Yale already knows it's a great school, but you want to dig deep because the college website really doesn't say it all. So if you can find very specific things about the school, don't mention prestige, weather, rankings, location maybe, but try not to. Mascot, if you do it in a clever way, you could. Financial aid, acceptance rates, legacy, don't do that. Like those are shallow. You can find a lot of information on the websites. Social media is a good one because you can find things that would normally not be on the website. You can find some on information sessions. So they usually do like admission officer information sessions. You can even reach out to current students or alumni or Google. just Google like fun facts about the school that nobody knows. For me, like one of my essays, and I forget which, maybe NYU, Abu Dhabi, New York University. I remember like I started with when I attended the information session with this admissions officer on October 12th, 20, whatever, like the date, it clicked. I knew, or something very cheesy, like I knew that this was gonna be where I wanted to spend the next 4 years. Like, so that showed that was deep. I was like, oh, I was at that admissions officer's info session, and I want you to know that I was because I'm really digging deep into your school. Or if you can say, when I watched, I think I did this for a school too. When I watched the live Instagram live takeover by this student on the social media of NYU, I knew that this person, that specific, because they actually know. The admissions officers know what's going on, like on their admissions pages, on their Instagrams and whatever. So if they see a student going that deep, they're like, oh yeah, let's admit this person. They really want to come here. I hope. And then how to put your thoughts together. I think a good way is like write out what you want from the school in general, and then find out what the school offers about it. So for me, I had like computational biology research. I had academic curriculum. I had community service opportunities where I could teach people how to code because I had been doing that prior to applying. So it was very easy for me to be like, I can continue my efforts with Technovation, or I can continue my efforts with University of Lagos where I've been teaching at this school through this exact specific program. You get what I mean? So this is for, I'm going to read out my Why Us essay for Duke, which I think I mentioned I did get into. So computation plus X bio research, and then this is like matching it. I like found out a specific professor's name that does comp bio research, found a specific class I wanted to take, the name of the class, I wrote it, Center for Genomics and Comp Bio, and then I mentioned their Duke engages Eureka program to continue teaching people how to code, and then Forever Duke, Blue Devil Pride, like just like things about Duke, like tradition wise. And you can swap this out for any school. I did this thing, I wrote the same thing for every school that had Why Us. So it's not like they weren't special, but when you're applying to 20 something schools, every school has to be special. So you just rinse and repeat. And then you can also leave room for like random things that catch your attention or interest. All right, so here we go. Please share with us why you consider Duke a good match for you. Is there something in particular about Duke's academic or other offerings that attract you? And I wrote here, in a world where patterns are converging and fields are overlapping, there's a growing need to blur lines between disciplines. Ooh, hook. As an ambitious blue devil, That's the name of like the mascot, whose educational journey will be emphatic on interdisciplinary flexibility. I am convinced that only at Duke can I become a total 21st century student. See, I wrote this for every school everywhere. So I said, I'm convinced that only at Yale can I, I'm convinced that only at NYU can I, can you see, like, recycle, but recycle with, sense. By taking advantage of the CS department's utterly unique computation plus X research areas, I will get to witness intellectual classroom experiences morph into experiential ones. As a freshman, I hope to work with Professor Raluca Gordon to produce state-of-the-art computational methods for elucidating protein DNA interactions. That's crazy. I'm actually working on protein DNA interactions right now in my PhD. Foreshadowed. Such a foundation will further propel me towards opportunities, like exploration at the Center for Genomics and Computational Biology. They'll be pivotal in the pursuit of my long-term goal of utilizing computational principles to construct groundbreaking predictive models for novel biochemical phenomena. Furthermore, with my passion for community development via technology education through Duke Engage's Eureka Summer Program at Orange County, I can expand on my current work with Technovation Girls, so I'm tying this back to something that I do in my life, and in the process, contribute towards the Duke community support of global positive change. To think that, even after 4 years of such unparalleled chances, I can hold on to being hashtag forever Duke. And forever Duke is something that like Duke students say about them. It's a slogan. If you know, you know. For fun, I'm going to read 2 more essays because I don't know what the title of this video will be, but I feel like I'm going to, for clickbait, be like essays that got me into MIT, Harvard, Stanford, so that people actually watch it and the algorithms push it up. And I haven't read a single essay I wrote to MIT. Oh yeah, the gist I told you. I told you the last line of my chemistry lab, like the door squeak thing, right? The Stanford admissions officer actually wrote me a note about it. So this is something that Stanford does. When you get into Stanford, they send you, the admission officer sends each student a note, or a specific note about their application, something in their application that stood out. So I wrote here, the title, the supplemental, it was a 50-word essay. It's very short. For Stanford, name one thing you're looking forward to experiencing at Stanford. And I said, when not perfecting my new bike riding ability around campus, I had just learned how to ride a bike, I anticipate admiring the breathtaking aesthetics of the Clark Center while conducting research in open lab spaces with collaborative students and faculty from various disciplines. Here it comes, here it comes. I look forward to hopefully finding my new chemistry lab there, whether or not the door squeaks. Mic drop. Like, yeah, I remember when I wrote this, I read it to one of my friends at the time who was helping me review essays, and they were like, "This is so good." And I was like, "You think so? Like, right? You think so? You think so?" And it turns out that that part also stood out to the admissions officer. They were like, "Can't wait for you to ride your bike around the Clark Center and hopefully find your new chemistry lab there." Guys, that was just that was craft. That's craft. Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Like, it tied back. That, how you connect the supplemental to the personal, and like that's how the admissions officer also definitely read the personal statement, because you only get it if you don't get it, forget about it. Like, you get it, you get it. You get it or you don't. So, yes. Why did I throw my paper on the floor? That was too dramatic. Okay, to do good on my promise, here is an MIT essay. So it goes, we know you lead a busy life full of activities, many of which are required of you. Tell us about something you do just for the pleasure of it. 250 words. I think this essay was very odd. I actually don't even know if this was the right type of thing to write about this, but MIT is a very quirky school, so I kind of thought that it would work, and I guess it worked. So it goes, in Lagos, every hour is rush hour. So I was used to the bumper-to-bumper standstills when returning home from school. Every minute, my dad would take the gear shift to D, move an inch, and then take it back to P. I usually had my textbook and calculator in my lap, trying to get a head start on calculus questions. But after 60 minutes of colossal traffic, I would lose focus as my eyes found a perfect outlet in the car window. This is cute. This is actually true. Maybe not every minute, but when my dad would pick us up from school, I always remember we would just be inside traffic. And I said get a head start on calculus questions. Calculus was just further math. Okay. Sticking my head out of the window, I would survey the scene. Traffic directors flailing their arms to reveal damp armpits. Groundnut sellers optimistically moving from car to car with trays of commodities steadying on their heads. But nothing quite caught my attention like plate numbers, populated by diverse characters. You can probably imagine the admissions officer being like, "Oh, the plate number essay." I don't know if they even like this essay. I'll never know. They were like puzzles, plate numbers, waiting to be deciphered. I would take in the figures on the neighboring car's bumper as KSF 622AE. But once processed, instantaneously, they would be reordered alphabetically and sequentially to output KSF 622AE to output A22E6FKS. Puzzle deciphered. I know it's unusual, but in hour-long traffic jams, it can be quite entertaining for me. From plate numbers to street signs and billboards, I find order in disorder, seeking inner peace amidst ear-numbing car horns. This is something I still do is like when my mind is just like wandering, I'll find words and just like arrange them in alphabetical order just for fun, I guess. It's a little, game. To me, reordering these figures is synonymous with debugging computer programs and decoding DNA codons. I didn't decode DNA codons. Well, I guess, yeah, I guess we're just projecting into the future. Fun things are analytical. Likewise, plate numbers satisfy me as much as riding my bike at dusk or exporting renders of final cuts for my edited videos do. The smallest things are most pleasurable. Yeah, I had just started learning how to edit videos. This was during COVID. Yeah, that was one skill I picked up, and I haven't done it in a while. So hopefully, I can actually edit this video. I don't have much to say. This was just a fun essay, and it's an MIT essay. And it was funny because when I wrote my MIT essay straight into the applications, I did not get my MIT essays back until I got in and then got to the school and then emailed them to ask if I could get them because I never saved them. Can you imagine? That's how last minute it was. I want to now, as we're drawing to a close and getting towards the end of this, talk about, like I said, brainstorming. Um, and where do you start? Like, where do you start, right? I started with brainstorming. So these are some brainstorming exercises that I will link and that I use that I still like. And I copied these from College Essay Guy. So please check him out. If you haven't Googled him already, why have you not paused this video to Google him? So one was a values exercise. Basically, how this exercise works is it says, okay, just a preceding quote, who you are is a product of your values. And so your personal essay is a product of your values. Very true. I think that writing for college applications really made me introspect about my life and think about my life. And that was very helpful and good to do. So just pick, there'll be a list of values that you can pick from. Pick the top 5 to 10 that you believe align closely with your character. And then make sure that as you're writing your essays, you're thinking about which of these values you're reflecting, right? So things just to anchor you as you write. A few of mine that I've tried to weave into my essays while writing them, I mentioned in the chemistry lab, like empathy and leadership and curiosity, responsibility, other things. So you've already heard those. The next brainstorming exercise is the essence objects exercise. I really liked this one. So basically, it goes, imagine you had a box. In this box, you could put a set of objects, each of which represents a part of you. Write down 10 or more of these objects with as many descriptive details as possible. Now survey your list. What value does each object speak of? Could you write a paragraph with that object as the focus? And yeah, that's actually how my big red bus essay came about. I mean, it doesn't even have to be an object. It can be a thing. It can be a place. So essence items, essence location. So the big red bus was one, and I ended up having that as an essay. I was senior prefect in secondary school, so my badge was an essence object. My mom likes ballerina tea, which is like this green tea. So every time she would come home, she would say ballerina, so that we would get tea for her. And, like that was just such a very like core memory and part of growing up. There's other things similar to that I had. Then my IGCSE physics textbook that was torn to pieces because I didn't really enjoy physics. It's funny because I think a lot more about physics now in the type of research I'm doing, and I spent the most time with physics because I found it the most difficult and did not like it the most. So yeah, but all my cons of physics are behind me. And then a final exercise is just the everything I want colleges to know about me exercise. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory, but you can find it on the internet. you go to college as a guy, yeah, it's just you just write out all the things you want to make sure that colleges know, like things about your personality, things about what you've achieved, things about what you've done, like everything you feel you need to package your life story that would be enough for them to know that you should be at their school. So college as a guy, who is he? Why should you care? I think you just Google him. I would say explore his website. Enough said. Something I should mention as a quick plug. I mean, I've talked a bit about education USA. I have a video on that. So that was something that was helpful for my process. But I also did this thing called the Matchlighter Scholarship, which is through College Essay Guy, where for free, his team matches you with like a college admissions or someone who's experienced with college admissions to help you review your essays. So I had this guy who I was matched with who's so sweet, and I haven't spoken to since then. I hope he's doing well. So I would meet with him like every few weeks on Zoom, or every week, I forgot. And he helped me get my chemistry lab essay to what it got to. Like, um, I forget, but I think he may have been the one who actually recommended to add like something about the door or something to make a full circle. And when I put it in, he was like, "It's ready." um, so the thing is, the Max Lighter Scholarship was open to international students back then. I heard it no longer is. I heard that might also have changed. So I'll just say look into it if you want to. Please, please, please. It is not the make or break of an application. Without it, I think by God's grace, I would still have been fine. I'm just throwing it out there because it's tied to College Essay Guy. College Essay Guy is, like his name says, the college essay guy. I really hope this is helpful for people. I wish you all the best, to everyone watching. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, this was actually not as bad as I thought. I low-key enjoyed just chatting. I'm a yapper. I'm a yapper. I can yap. And so I yapped. Bye.